Popes are often remembered for some standout element in their lives or pontificates. Benedict XVI was the professor and theologian. John Paul II has been remembered as the Pope of the family. John the 23rd as the smiling Pope or the good Pope. So how will Pope Francis be remembered?
Pope Francis's priority was stated, I think, at one of the general congregations before he was elected, which is a church that is not stuck in on itself, but knows how to go out and reach out, what he calls the peripheries.
The Pope of the peripheries. But he wasn't just focused on reaching out to people in the city slums or at the geographical ends of the earth.
He was speaking also about people who are on the margins, who are marginalized in other ways. The disabled, the mentally ill, the homeless, abuse victims. All of these groups of people, he went out of his way to meet with prisoners during his pontificate. And so when he preached about Christians, about Catholics having care for the poor, about going out to the peripheries, he did the same. He didn't just speak about it, he did it.
He's not from the left, he's not from the right. He wanted to cancel the globalization of indifference. I mean, that you cannot stay calm while people are suffering near to you. I think this is very Christian.
And as the whole world suffered at the outset of the COVID pandemic, it was Pope Francis who encouraged us all through it. Who could forget the extraordinary moment of prayer in St. Peter's Square when he addressed the desolation and uncertainty of billions and offered all of humanity up to God's protection.
From this colonnade that embraces Rome and the whole world, may God's blessing come down upon you as a consoling embrace. Lord, may you bless the world, give health to our bodies, and comfort our hearts.
From his pulpit here in Rome, but also during his travels around the world, he instructed, he counseled, and he prayed, never missing an opportunity to proclaim God's unbounded mercy.
Judging that attention to those most in need, people have long referred to him as the Pope of Mercy. Pope Francis based many of his actions and activities in the corporal and spiritual works of mercy. He constantly comforted the sorrowful, reached out to the poorest of the poor, visited the sick and those in jail. Pope Francis made the unexpected decision even to call an extraordinary Jubilee Year of Mercy for 2016. And on the occasion, he also sent out missionaries of mercy, priests given a special mandate to go out in his name to preach mercy and especially to hear confessions and bring God's forgiveness to the people. Father Roger Landry was one of them. Being a missionary of mercy has given him the chance to gauge the legacy of Pope Francis among the people.
I think Pope Francis' inheritance will be threefold. First, it's going to be his priority for mercy, which he showed in terms of his own personal life, as well as in sending out the missionaries of mercy and calling a Jubilee for mercy. The second is not forgetting anybody. He really cared about those on what he called the existential peripheries, and he focused on them perhaps even more than those on the center. And then third, I think he will be known for what he said to the youth of the world in Brazil in 2013. He encouraged them to go out and hacer lío, Spanish for make a mess. And he has caused a little confusion himself by some of his decisions, as well as by some of the things that he hasn't paid attention to. And so whoever his successor is will have to bring a little bit of order to the lío or to the chaos that Pope Francis himself promoted.
The Pope of Mess. Some say he was just a shepherd, leaving the 99 to go after the one lost sheep.
Once I asked the Pope if he was worried that the fact that he was speaking mainly to the ones who are far away and that the ones who are closer feel a little bit alone. And he said, well, if the people are really closer, they are happy that I'm speaking with the ones that are far away.
Just as his namesake, Saint Francis, Pope Francis took on rebuilding the church. Some referred to him as a reformer, as he created a new apostolic constitution to restructure how the Roman Curia serves the Pope and the Church, and invited church leadership to be synodal, a group effort guided by listening. And his changes weren't just structural, they were meant to reform hearts.
I asked once if he has the perception that he was changing the culture, the Catholic culture. And he said that all the lay people, especially the lay peoples who are Catholic, change the culture because they give hope and they give perspective. And I think that this is what he was trying to say with this pontificate, to give hope and also to give a long perspective, not only a perspective of today.
To give hope. He dedicated the 2025 Jubilee year to hope, titling the official papal bull of indiction, Spes non confundit, Hope Does Not Disappoint. In it, he wrote, Christian hope does not deceive or disappoint because it is grounded in the certainty that nothing and no one may ever separate us from God's love. A key message in Pope Francis's reign, so much so that he titled his 2025 autobiography simply Hope. Hannah Brockhouse covered most of his pontificate as Catholic News Agency's senior Rome correspondent, studying him day in and day out for the better part of a decade.
If you look at the latter years, I think you could also call him the Pope of Peace. He focused a lot on messages of peace. He made many appeals for Ukraine during the conflict with Russia. And he was also the first pope to visit Iraq, and he was also able to set foot in the Democratic Republic of Congo. That was really important to him. There, in both places, he gave really important messages of peace, and even just by being in those places, a strong message of peace. His emphasis on a synodal church, and I think his emphasis as well on ecumenism, on Christian dialogue, interreligious dialogue, I think he made some huge strides in those areas and in unifying the church and bringing us one step closer, hopefully, to being unified in those areas. In other areas, people may feel more divided over some of the decisions Pope Francis made.
The Pope of Unity. He hired Argentinian Marcelo Figueroa as the first Protestant columnist in the more than 160-year history of the Vatican's newspaper.
Un papa que se ha abierto de una manera.
He's a pope that opened himself in a productive, exciting, determined way, with Parrhesia, as he says, to the true encounter with Christians of other faiths, with the Muslim, with the Jew, with indigenous peoples, with all religions. And really, he had such a great impact that he will perhaps be remembered as the most important ecumenical, interreligious, and intercultural figure in the history of humanity.
Cultural más importante de la historia de la humanidad.
Whether he's remembered as the Pope of the Peripheries, the Pope of Mercy, the Pope of Mess, the Reformer Pope, the Pope of Hope, the Pope of Peace, or the Pope of Dialogue, he will always be the first Pope Francis, the Pope who always asked that the world not forget to pray for him.
Pope Francis, the progressive pope who championed LGBT rights and pushed for social justice, a breath of fresh air to the traditionally minded Catholic Church, has passed away at the age of 88. If you followed any of the news this week about Pope Francis's death, this is almost surely how it was presented, both from the left-leaning secular media that loved Pope Francis and the right-leaning Catholic media that often hated him. Progressive, social justice, against tradition, a fundamental change from what came before, a man with a different agenda. For 12 years now, I've heard these caricatures from right and from left, these overly simplistic descriptions from people who can only see the world through the lens of American politics. I guess it's unsurprising then that this is exactly how people will choose to remember him now that he's gone. But this is not the Pope Francis that I knew, and it is not the one that I will remember. As far as I'm concerned, anyone who calls him progressive or liberal or a break from tradition betrays the fact that they don't know much about the tradition of the church or what Pope Francis really meant to this generation. For me, if I had to summarize his legacy in one word, capture what he spent all his time trying to effect in the church, it wouldn't be progressive or liberal or anything to do with changing tradition. It would be relationship. When we actually read his words and study what he actually taught, especially in his three most important documents, Evangelii Gaudium, Fratelli Tutti, and Laudato Si, what we see is a constant reminder to fix our relationships with Jesus, with one another, and with the created world all around us. It probably seems obvious to state that the Pope loved Jesus Christ. It was kind of his job. But it's a part of Pope Francis's legacy that is so often overlooked. In his apostolic exhortation, Evangelii Gaudium, the joy of the gospel, maybe my favorite church document of all time, he puts this front and center of our lives. I invite all Christians everywhere at this very moment to a renewed personal encounter with Jesus Christ, or at least an openness to letting him encounter them. I ask all of you to do this unfailingly each day. No one should think that this invitation is not meant for him or her, since no one is excluded from the joy brought by the Lord. The Lord does not disappoint those who take this risk. Whenever we take a step towards Jesus, we come to realize that he is already there, waiting for us with open arms. Now is the time to say to Jesus, Lord, I have let myself be deceived. In 1,000 ways I have shunned your love, yet here I am once more to renew my covenant with you. I need you. Save me once again, Lord. Take me once more into your redeeming embrace. How good it feels to come back to him whenever we are lost. Let me say it once more. God never tires of forgiving us. We are the ones who tire of seeking his mercy. Christ, who told us to forgive one another 70 times 7, has given us his example. He has forgiven us 70 times 7. Time and again, he bears us on his shoulders. No one can strip us of the dignity bestowed upon us by this boundless and unfailing love. With a tenderness which never disappoints, but is always capable of restoring our joy, he makes it possible for us to lift up our heads and to start anew. Let us not flee from the resurrection of Jesus. Let us never give up, come what will. May nothing inspire more than his life, which impels us onwards. It was his love for Jesus, this foundational relationship, that inspired him to write so much about the need for showing mercy to others and sharing the good news. According to Pope Francis, we go out and help others not because we're social justice warriors, not because it's what good people do, not because we want to increase the number of people in the pews. We do this because Jesus has loved us and because we love him so much that we can't bear the thought that someone might not even know him. Let us go forth then. Let us go forth to offer everyone the life of Jesus Christ. Here I repeat for the entire church what I have often said to the priests and laity of Buenos Aires. I prefer a church which is bruised, hurting, and dirty because it has been out on the streets, rather than a church which is unhealthy from being confined and from clinging to its own security. I do not want a church concerned with being at the center and which then ends by being caught up in the web of obsessions and procedures. If something should rightly disturb us and trouble our consciences, it is the fact that so many of our brothers and sisters are living without the strength, light, and consolation born of friendship with Jesus Christ, without a community of faith to support them, without meaning and a goal in life. More than by fear of going astray, my hope is that we will be moved by the fear of remaining shut up within structures which gives us a false sense of security, within rules which make us harsh judges, within habits which make us feel safe, while at our door people are starving and Jesus does not tire of saying to us, give them something to eat. I believe that the fundamental problem with so much of what is said about Pope Francis is that this part is skipped over. People focus on the issues he chose to emphasize and label him a liberal or progressive. They box him into political categories because that's what they're used to. But this is just wrong. He wasn't a politician. Everything he said, everything he did, everything he called for was rooted in the need to foster a relationship with Jesus. If you have still not read Evangelii Gaudium, you are missing out on who Pope Francis really was and what our life as Christians should be about. Of course, being a Christian in this world isn't just about evangelization, it's about being in relationship with others. Friends, family members, co-workers, people of other races and nationalities, worshipers of other faiths, even with people who hate us. How do we navigate this? Pope Francis taught us that we need to be a brother and sister to all in his encyclical Fratelli Tutti on fraternity and social friendship. Released in the fall of 2020, it was the most of-the-time document he wrote. In the midst of COVID, in the wake of racial upheaval, with isolationist and nationalist ideologies on the rise throughout the world, it looked like the world was falling apart. Everyone hated everyone, and outright societal collapse seemed imminent. In this document, Pope Francis spoke against the dark clouds of our age, warning against those who spread despair and discouragement as a means of controlling others. This mindset leads to the abandonment of those in need. Instead, he asks us to seek a different approach. If we accept the great principle that there are rights born of our inalienable human dignity, we can rise to the challenge of envisaging a new humanity. We can aspire to a world that provides land, housing, and work for all. This is the true path of peace, not the senseless and myopic strategy of sowing fear and mistrust in the face of outside threats. For a real and lasting peace will only be possible on the basis of a global ethic of solidarity and cooperation in the service of a future shaped by interdependence and shared responsibility in the whole human family. In other words, we're in this together, all of us. There is no benefit to division, no benefit to ignorance, no benefit to defeating our enemies. When one suffers, we all suffer. Our goal as Christians must be to form community, seek reconciliation, and heal the wounds of everyone. Each day, we have to decide whether to be good Samaritans or indifferent bystanders. It is the moment of truth. Will we bend down to touch and heal the wounds of others? Will we bend down and help another to get up? This is today's challenge, and we should not be afraid to face it. A task that is only possible, he taught, if we have an open world and open hearts. If we are a people who are willing to walk together despite others' differences. It requires true friendship and active dialogue, learning how to be silent so that we can not only listen to others, but can come to know them. Something that applies to everyone, no matter their religion, ethnicity, nationality, intelligence, or moral goodness. We are brothers and sisters to all, without exception. Which leads nicely to the final relationship that he called us to, one of love and respect for everything in God's created world. In his seminal work, Laudato Si, on care for our common home, Francis reminds us of our interconnectivity with all that exists. The ultimate destiny of the universe is the fullness of God. The ultimate purpose of other creatures is not to be found in us. Rather, all creatures are moving forward with us and through us towards a common point of arrival, which is God, in that transcendent fullness where the risen Christ embraces and illumines all things. Human beings, endowed with intelligence and love and drawn by the fullness of Christ, are called to lead all creatures back to their Creator. God may have entrusted the world to our dominion, but that doesn't mean that we have a right to destroy or abuse his gift. We are its caretakers. More than the absolute owners of the earth, we should see ourselves as its older brothers and sisters, set to ensure its well-being along with ours. It's because of this that, despite being characterized as a document simply on the environment, something that many on the right couldn't understand and so dismissed, it's really a document about what he calls integral ecology, a sense of being in the world that shows love and respect for everything God has created because we are interconnected with everything God has created. We have only one heart, and the same wretchedness which leads us to mistreat an animal will not be long in showing itself in our relationships with other people. Every act of cruelty towards any creature is contrary to human dignity. At its core, it is a document that recognizes that our actions have an effect on the world around us. There is no just throwing something away. Our trash, our waste, our carelessness always goes somewhere. And it may hurt an animal. It may disproportionately hurt the poor, and it may even hurt a future generation. To be a Christian is to care about what effect my actions have on others. It is to have the humility to realize that nothing belongs to us alone, especially not the limited resources of the world or the beautiful things of creation. The world does not exist for my pleasure. It has dignity in its own right as a creation of God, demanding that we be in right relationship with it. Unfortunately, despite being his most novel contribution to the faith and a wholly prophetic message in our age, little has been done around the world to implement what he's challenged us to, which, on the one hand, is extremely disappointing and difficult to think about in terms of his legacy, but on the other hand, speaks to how truly prophetic it was. Our world was just not ready to hear it yet. While it might seem great if everything a pope says is widely accepted with praise, I can't help but wonder if this is only the case when a pope doesn't adequately challenge the world. Like him or not, Pope Francis was no coward. He may not have been as intellectual as Benedict XVI or as wholesome as John Paul II, but he had as much integrity as any pope we've ever seen. He understood what his role to the church and world was. When he saw a disconnect between what Christians should be doing and what the church was actually doing, when he saw a relationship that was shallow, inconsistent, lifeless, or selfish, He spoke up, often to the detriment of his popularity. For Francis, the doctrines and procedures of the church only made sense if they were to the aid of a relationship, if they supported the mission of the church. What may have appeared like the dismantling of traditions to some was just Francis pointing out the hollowness of traditions without a relationship. What may have appeared like progressivism and liberal politics to others was just Francis being willing to encounter anyone, anywhere, without judgment. What good is it to have structures and safety and a good public image if we are sick and lonely inside the church? What good is it to have pomp and circumstance without personal holiness? What good is preaching about love if we choose to exclude on one side and allow anything to go without correction on the other? None of it matters if we don't have a relationship with Jesus, one another, and the world around us. This is what Pope Francis spent 12 years trying to teach the world, and is what I will always remember about him. Eternal rest grant unto him, O Lord, and let perpetual light shine upon him. May his soul and the souls of all the faithful departed, through the mercy of God, rest in peace.